What's poppin', y'all? One article about viewbotting set the entire streaming industry up in flames. And we're going to go over it. First off, this is how it looks to start. It's time to start viewbotting. Now, this article was written by Reed JD, who's CEO of Night Media. So we have to have some important context here. Who is Reed? Well, Night Media, they manage some of the biggest streamers, content creators. Like, you guys remember last year when Cenat's profit and loss statement of his monthly income had leaked? I'm going to show you guys on screen right now. Now, you see Night Media where it says January to February, year to date, $1.6 million. So they paid him out $1.6 million from January to February. So that's how big this company is. And Cenat is just one of many. And this guy's the CEO of that company. So he knows a little bit of something about this industry. So he starts writing and we're going to go through this because I think a lot of people are misinterpreting what he's saying. So he says, what does it take to cut through all the noise on the internet? If everyone else is botting, why shouldn't you? We used to live in a world where if you made great content, algorithms would find an audience for your videos. I don't think this is necessarily true. I think it's easier now, but early days, it wasn't like that. The algorithm wasn't as sophisticated, especially if we're talking about YouTube and if we're talking about Twitch. At that time, the supply was so low that if you made good stuff consistently, you would probably be found. But a lot of people back then, they only got on because they were shouted out by somebody else, like even on YouTube. Now, a lot of things have changed since then, but I don't believe that this was true. He says now streamers, we have to make that very clear. Streamers have to clip farm, pay clippers, and sometimes even viewbot to have a better chance of capturing more attention and breaking through the noise. This is especially true on platforms like Twitch. 100% agree with him here, where viewbotting can surface you on the front page of popular streaming categories. Thankfully, if you've reached the top leaderboards on Twitch and have amassed a large audience, you probably don't need to viewbot. However, there's been a lot of drama on X recently related to the largest streamers on Twitch allegedly viewbotting. He's talking about FaZe, but also the Burnt Peanut, which is this guy that's averages like 50K viewers plus. This has gotten me thinking, is viewbotting a legitimate strategy? Do advertisers have any way of tracking bot engagement, and why isn't Twitch cracking down on this? So first off, he calls out the platforms. Now keep in mind, he benefits from this guy, Reed. He already has big clients. So he does not benefit at all from telling people this or helping. This is like helping smaller streamers, which he does not need to do. He does not benefit from this whatsoever. So I wouldn't say he's like doing this from the goodness of his heart, but I do think he believes that he's trying to make the industry a little bit healthier for everyone involved. So it says, we've been dealing with this issue for a long time now, and I remember reading an article from Rolling Stone where up to 13% of the movement behind the Release the Snyder Cut campaign came from botted accounts. Nicki Minaj has come under fire lately for botting. I do think that those are people botting her. Like, let's be real here. Nicki Minaj is a massive superstar. She's put butts in seats. That's all we got to say. On platforms like X, bots tend to leave behind little evidence. Yeah, we're going to skip this section and go specifically Twitch. Outside of jumping from 3K viewers to 50K in a matter of minutes, where there isn't really a clear way of telling who's botting and who isn't, the only evidence we get as viewers is the live viewer count and the speed of messages in chat. Twitch has been dealing with this for years now. A post from Devin Nash sums it up well, and he even goes on to say that there's no real downside to botting your stream if you're in the top 500 creators. This is true as well. Back in August, there was a huge crackdown on Twitch overall, which showed lower viewership for Twitch, which doesn't help Twitch because because Twitch is owned by Amazon. So if they're like, hey, wait, this platform is getting less viewers now, that doesn't look good for advertisers either because they're going to want to pay less. But that is something that Twitch did. And I hope that trend continues for the foreseeable future. This is happening again, and bots are finding ways to go undetected. My belief, echoed by XQC, is that they don't care to enforce this. The more views there are, the better things look for advertisers. Yes, but advertisers get screwed, and eventually advertisers learn, okay, I'm not getting my return here. I'm going to go elsewhere, which is where it messes things up for Reed. I would never explicitly say you should bot your viewers on Twitch, other than in the title of this article. But the reality is, if you're not view botting and everyone else is, you're at a disadvantage. And this is the truth, and people don't like this truth. But then, especially, this is a Twitch and a streamer specific thing. not for anywhere else, because anywhere else you're not going to benefit from it. But this takes me back to sports, for instance. If you guys remember the cyclist Lance Armstrong, he got so much heat. He was vilified for getting caught using performance-enhancing drugs. He was one of the best cyclists ever, or he was like considered the GOAT. However, what people don't focus on is that I believe of the top 50, like 30 plus were also caught. So everyone in the top 50 was using, and Lance Armstrong was also using, yet he was better than all of them, and he won. But people call him a drug cheat, and he was honestly, he went through a lot. But if you were a Lance Armstrong and you're looking around and you're seeing every other competitor of yours using performance-enhancing drugs, and this is your career, this is your livelihood, and you have zero chance of competing without it. Like, let's say there's top 50. Maybe you can get to number 30 because you're just naturally better than some people who are using performance-enhancing drugs. But if you took it, you would be in the top 10, which is night and day. And is it really cheating if everybody else is doing it? That's the problem. So that's a nuanced discussion that people don't want to have. And I do understand why some people at the top are all using, because if you don't, you're losing. So Dexerto replies to this, and they put out an article. Really, the article is somewhat nuanced, but the headline is really what caught people's attention. And he says, streamer manager voiced support. He didn't do that, but that's what caught people's attention. Voiced support for viewbotting, saying creators are at a disadvantage without it. So in this article, they kind of push up on him, and they disincentivize somebody like this from telling the truth. And so Hassan is another one of this guy's clients, apparently. So yeah, he says streamers they say, Dexerto, while platforms need to step up their game when it comes to fighting against viewbots, creators who don't are doing themselves a huge disservice. Yes, they are doing themselves a huge disservice. But we're just going to continue because there are some other streamers that have called this guy out as well. When you're competing in a category where you're buried if you don't have 500 plus viewers, maybe shifting your strategy to paying clippers and buying bots helps a streamer break through. This is the problem too. When it comes to clippers, you're competing with a platform like Kick as well, but we're going to get into that a little bit later. I wanted to see what it would cost to bot a stream, and for $180 a week on Viewbotter, I can get 1,500 followers, 225 chatters, and 750 concurrent viewers. Not bad for less than $800 a month, and these companies accept crypto payments. And this is the thing. If someone is getting 750 concurrent viewers, and like let's say they have 250 real viewers for $800 a month, and for 1,000 viewers, actually I'll give you guys a clip right now from Devin Nash, who's somebody that works on the agency side of things, that explains why this makes financial sense as well.
Just keep in mind, as an agency CEO, I've done thousands of deals on Twitch. I just know these rates. You can also confirm these by looking up the rates online. But generally speaking, it's going to be about 80 cents to $1.50 as of 2026 per CCV. That means per viewer, okay? And the typical range that you'll get quoted is about $1 to $3. Now, it'll be higher if it's like more premium. So like obviously if I'm going to sponsor someone like Cenat, who has like a very limited inventory of advertisements that they can support, and frankly just a lot of exclusivity and like power behind his brand, that number is going to trend up higher. And then like if I have someone that's like less exclusive and it's like it's easier, then it's going to be lower. But generally you're going to run like this range here, and sometimes you're going to go higher. That means that for 1,000 CCV, so a person that gets 1,000 viewers, okay, typical sponsorship is 2 hours long for a video game, and we'll just put it right in the middle. We'll just say it's $2, okay? So for all you math aces out there, how much money does a single sponsorship for 2 hours at $2 make for 1,000 CCV streamer? It's $4,000, okay? So $4,000 is what the streamer would end up getting, except that an agency typically takes about 20%. That's like on the high side. It's about 15 to 10% sometimes. And especially with Twitch in like 2025, 2026, that number is trending downward. But I just want to say let's say it's 20%. That's about $800 because that's 20 of 4,000. Okay. So what that means is that the streamer gets for this 2 hour deal, $3,200, and the agency gets $800. Okay. Now comes the interesting part. Okay. So
So if you're an agency, right, and you're getting deals, and this is just a standard deal that we have right here. So $3,200 for 1,000 concurrent viewers, which costs $800 a month. So you're making a net profit of $2,400 a month if you're able to get 1,000 concurrent viewers and you're paying for, like, let's say 750 and you have 250 real ones. And you only need one sponsor a month for 2 hours worth of work. That's a money printer right there. So it's not even as if, like, for example, because with streaming music, which is a little bit different, it's expensive to bot. So if for 1 million streams, it costs 4,000, let's say 4,000, let's say you're paid out $4,000 for 1 million streams. But to bot 1 million streams, it costs more than $4,000. Now, you're not incentivized to bot. Now, does the botting still happen? Yes, but as a smaller artist, it doesn't make sense for you. As bigger artists, they just want to make the numbers look bigger because then they can have headlines, and then there's more of like a brand equity type of thing with, oh, this artist is number one. This artist is streaming more than everyone else, as opposed to a smaller person. And Reed here is talking about the smaller person. So and also the agencies, they get their cut. So if they may even be botting on behalf of these streamers, which FaZe Clan was getting accusations of. So if you're FaZe Clan, you're trying to get deals for them, and you have the connections and the brand of FaZe Clan, you can juice their bot numbers even higher because they're like, okay, these guys get 10K, let's double it to 20K. And that's only going to cost, and we're always getting ROI on the botting because in the back end, the sponsors are paying way more. So he says, is there any way to detect it? From what I've researched about detecting view botting, even Dan Clancy has mentioned that detecting bots is a cat and mouse game. When allegations start surfacing online, streamers are left to state their case and prove that their audience is real. And for brands, is there any way to tell if a streamer is botting their viewership? I couldn't find anything legitimate that I would trust. There currently isn't a website out there that can credibly detect bots on Twitch. Someone build this and email it to me. The big takeaway, we've entered an era where good content alone isn't enough. For streaming, this is 100% true, but for every other platform, it's the opposite, I would say. Distribution tactics are: when clipping, paid amplification, and even bots can artificially push you up the rankings, the playing field starts to tilt toward whoever is willing to game it. Twitch's detection tools feel reactive at best, and advertisers don't seem to have a reliable way to verify what's real. If botting becomes normalized, creators face a brutal question: compete clean and risk invisibility, or bend the rules to survive. Long term, though, this erodes trust in the entire ecosystem. So here, the takeaway, which sums up what this guy is saying, is not that you should bot, but that if this continues and if there isn't a way to combat this, then trust in the ecosystem falls. If trust falls, sponsors, advertisers, they're not going to want to invest money in this. Reed's company makes less money, but he has huge streamers, so it's a little bit different. But a lot of these other mid-level agencies, they're going to lose out. The smaller streamers are going to lose out on deals too. So everybody loses if this isn't combated. But he's saying at this current point in time right now, if you're not botting, what are you doing? Like you're going to lose. And I have to connect this to what Moist Critical says, because Moist Critical is somebody who is a streamer himself, YouTuber for a very long time. And he replied to this.
Again, he drives that point home about good content alone isn't enough. It's all about distribution tactics. And I just firmly disagree. Good content alone is sometimes enough. But again, it does take luck. It does. It always has, and it always will. Distribution tactics, though, he's right, can be gamified and boost your shit and immediately give you a better chance so you're not overly reliant on luck. If you'd rather focus instead on pay-to-win mechanics through, like, clippers and viewbots and stuff like that, then you would be entering the Thunderdome competing head-to-head, toe-to-toe with countless others who are doing that daily. That is very, very common. And in many, many cases, it's hard to tell if it's real or fake. So it is a legitimate problem, and it sucks that platforms don't do anything about it.
This is ridiculous. Keep in mind, this person has made tens of millions of dollars, Moist Critical, and he came up like 15 years ago plus. When he's talking about luck, you have to put yourself in a position to get lucky. Like, for instance, let's say some even the lottery, right? Somebody wants to get rich, right? How do you get lucky? Well, the easiest example is anybody that ever won the lottery and got rich that way, they had to buy a lottery ticket. There has to be some sort of exposure that you put yourself to where you can benefit from luck. Just turning on the streaming button and streaming good content you can't get lucky. You're not in a position to get lucky. Because even if you scroll and scroll and scroll on Twitch, which nobody's doing, you're not going to encounter a streamer that has under 100 viewers for probably thousands of people you're going to go through. So when Moist Critical talks about like an element of luck, where's the luck going to happen? If we're talking strictly on Twitch, the luck cannot happen. The only way the luck can happen is outside of it, whether a clip, and that goes back to what the Night Media CEO was talking about. And I feel like this is a little bit emotional coming from, and I feel the same emotion too, because it's like, damn, dude, like this botting stuff is whack. Like people faking views, this is whack. But if we talk about it practically, what are you going to tell somebody? Yo, just stream and you might get lucky? Especially if you've already made it to like a Moist Critical. And I have to connect this to what Russ, the rapper, has said, the independent rapper that's given a lot of good advice and has made it himself.
Advice is a funny thing, man. I feel like people don't want truth. They want self-validation, you know? Because if they accept the advice, that means they have to admit that maybe they were wrong. And maybe their past decisions were suboptimal. And maybe somebody else saw a blind spot that you didn't see. So instead, you're going to deploy all these defenses like nitpicking and semantic objections and exceptions to the rule and all this bullshit like anecdotal counters, not because you're interested in accuracy, but because you're trying to preserve your ego.
Right.
You know? But it's like, okay, so you know everything except your role and why nothing's working. Because accountability is the only answer you seem to not have. But you know everything else.
So here, Russ talks about not giving people advice anymore because when he gives real actionable advice from a position of somebody who has already made it and become successful, he will get hate and people will dislike him more for telling them the truth. And this is the same thing. This Night Media CEO guy is getting hate for telling people, hey, this is the only way you can compete. But if he were to tell people like, yeah, you know, just stream and yeah, you know, you might catch a break. You just got to be consistent. People would like him more because that makes them feel good. And that's what Moist Critical is kind of doing here. And I think it's more of an emotional thing because he made it already. But Reed replies and says, didn't expect the newsletter to get this much heat this week. If you read the post I wrote, it was obviously commentary on up-and-coming streamers using viewbotting as a hack to break through. Something that is super prevalent across Twitch and especially Kick. For the record, none of the top creators mentioned in this do or would even consider the need to viewbot because they already built massive real communities. Subscribe to Nightlight for more yapping. The biggest problem here, too, is that the clips, remember when I talked about clips? Because distribution, and even Moist Critical agrees that distribution is necessary, but how are you going to get distribution now? It's almost like you need startup capital to succeed as a streamer. Because let's say you have the view bots. You want to increase real viewership. How are you going to do that? Well, now you're competing against Kick because Kick has a ridiculous amount of money, but they started to incentivize clippers with certain rates. So if you're a clipper, you're going to be like, okay, Kick pays out this much. I'm going to work with, and most of the Kick streamers are already known and recognizable. So getting views on those clips is a lot easier than getting views on some random new person that nobody knows, that has no face recognition. And Kick is constantly incentivizing people that are already popular and famous online to get on their platform. And part of the incentive is not just money, but hey, you can make this much on KPP, right? Which is how much you get paid hourly based on your real concurrent viewers. And we'll also offer you growth because, you're coming from another platform. We'll offer you growth because we have clippers that we won't charge you anything for and we will pay for. So that's why you get a guy like Rampage Jackson on there. That's why you get a guy like Larry Wheels hopping on there. That's why you get, Clavicular, he kind of blew up on Kick through Aiden Ross's community. That's how he built the first base. But they're offering, that's why you get a Neon going back to Kick. So these people that are already popular that you knew before, a Fusi, for instance, right? Although kick deals were still offered back then. So that's where you get a situation where, as a new person, you can't even compete with the amount of money that clippers would want to clip your stuff. Because they're looking at it like, damn, dude, I'm going to watch through your VOD when I could be watching through somebody else that's popular's VOD that I'm guaranteed to get more viewers off of. I think I'm going to opt out of that. So it's just nightmare mode to try to become a streamer. You basically have to do it yourself. So you have to be your own clipper, and you have to be a streamer, and you have to like execute on the distribution, and you got to hope that it works out for you. So it's very, very difficult. And Reed, I believe, is offering the best, most actionable strategy for somebody to blow up as a streamer. And he's getting hate for that. And he's pointing it out. He's not saying this is what you should do, but he's saying if you're not doing this, you're not even in competition. Like, don't even bother trying. Well, he's not saying don't bother trying. I'm reading into it as don't bother trying, which I agree with that as well. And an example of this is Rice Gum. People talk about Rice Gum as like a Hall of Fame streamer. Rice Gum got his start viewbotting. He was on MLG TV. He was doing these streams, and he would viewbot himself to the top. Part of the reason why Rice Gum got permanently banned on Twitch for a very long time was because he was viewbotting. And I think he even admitted it, because they don't ban streamers for being viewbotted, because I could just viewbot somebody and then they would get banned, but they weren't the ones viewbotting. So Rice Gum got lit doing this exact tactic about a decade ago. And now it's even more prevalent with more competition. Back then, there was less competition. Granted, there weren't the same forms of distribution, like short form, that there are now. But I'm willing to argue that short form, at the point it's at right now, does not really help streamer growth, because so many people will just watch clips and are not watching streams whatsoever. But yeah, let me know what y'all think about this in the comments. Like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. And I'm going to see y'all on the next one.